continue. So let's.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
So I'm just wondering how, if we can see in the text how things or why things morphed from that being an accepted practice to then not being an acceptable practice.
That's a good question. I don't think that we can have a direct textual proof. We do know that it did not resurface in the Second Temple. The Greeks did bring with them some kind of of this culture, but it was short lived in Israel. So if I would make an assumption or a guess, I would say that the destruction of the temple, of the first temple, was a catastrophic event, and people, because they were shocked by what happened. So this is a temple that stood more or less, according to estimate, for 400 years, continuing the tabernacle that was around for about 300 years. It's the center, it's the seat of power, seat of religious power, and the prophets continuously. I mean, if you look at prophets, and I'll show you that Hosea, Malachi, and other prophets speak about this issue, as well as corruption and other things. So I think that just the shock, and maybe also an influence of the Persian Empire, being under the Persian Empire, that did not view that favorably, because they came from a different culture. Maybe that was the combined reason that this practice has stopped. But as I said before, it's only stopped within the temple perimeters, but as a sort of an underground culture, the way men behave, promiscuity, unfaithfulness, and all that, it sort of continued. So I want to look at one more, there are several more cases, but in the Torah, we have one more case of the temple promiscuity that also is misunderstood, I think, and for me, I only sort of discovered it a couple of years ago when I started searching for specifically that topic in the Bible, and that is this story in Numbers chapter. Here. Sorry. It's in chapter 25 of Numbers, right? And this is the story of Phineas or Pinhas, who kills the Midianite woman and the Israeli chieftain, right? The head of the tribe of Shimon. And usually people understand that here's the core verse here. Behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianite woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel, while they were weeping at the door of the tent of meeting. And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose up from the midst of the congregation and took a spear in his hand, and he went and he killed them both, right? So traditionally, and this is how myself I understood it for years, from coming from yeshiva background, what was the sin of the man and why was he killed by Pinhas? I understood that, like I said, this is how I was taught, that it was because he slept with, or he wanted to sleep with a non-Jewish woman.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute and I attempted to answer your question.
You were going to answer this question. I
was on mute while I was answering it. You probably saw me talking and not hearing anything.
Oh, so what is this? Is what you said?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Which I find odd because Moses married a Midianite.
Right. And also odd because nowhere in this story right? Do we see that they actually had relationships? Look from the text. What does it say? What does it say? It says, he brought unto his brethren a Midianite woman. That's it.
Right.
But also, I mean, up above, I'm seeing in the first verse, it mentions harlotry.
Okay, so exactly, Abby. So let's go back to the verse. So this is, to me, it was amazing that I've been reading this parasha for 40 years, right? I'm like 40 years in the desert. I've never seen this connection until I started looking for the specific theme. And you're right. In Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit harlotry with the daughters of Moab. But this harlotry is explained better in the next verse. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bow down to their gods. So it's very clear from this text that this is cultic harlotry, right? It's done in connection with the service of the temple. And the people follow them, and then Moshe is told by God to kill all those who commit this act of paganism. But here's the interesting thing. What did the man do? The Israelite man who came and brought the woman to the tent, what was he doing? He didn't do anything yet, right?
Right.
They're weeping. I want to argue that he was doing exactly what the women who came with the mirrors at the time of the construction of the temple were doing. What he does here, it's a religious statement. It's not about desire. If it was about his desire, he would have gone to the daughters of Moab, away from the tent of meeting and into their place. Rather, he wants to say, I want to go back to our old religion, to the old system, where cult prostitution is allowed at the temple. So he makes a statement here, and that's why no one can take action, because he didn't commit any crime yet, and even if he does, it's a question of really presenting an opposing theology. It's Pinhas who decides to do that, and it will be interesting later on. I mean, when we talk about the context of a married couple, is that God says that Pinhas had turned my wrath away from the children of Israel, in that he was jealous. Jealousy is something that we associated with the married couple when there is an extramarital affair. And here also we speak about a covenant. God says, I'm giving him my covenant of peace. And we'll see later on that the prophets speak about the relationship between a man and a woman and a married couple as a covenant. She's called the woman of your covenant. Okay, so one less source in actually two sources that we have to look at in Torah that are related to it. And again, they could be surprising because we don't see them in this light usually. And one is here. Let me see. Now we're going to the book of Leviticus, and what we find here is this. Remember, I asked you before in the previous class, right? Who were the people that or the women that served as did the service at the temple? Who were they? So we said they could be very poor people, right? Who are doing that, they're like the margins of society, who are doing that. Or who else could they be? You think of?
The wives, the priests.
Yeah, when we look at it, right? It could be the wives or maybe the daughters of priests. Is it possible that a priest will direct his daughter to do that? Let me see. 1 second. I want to go to the pasuk. So that we have this text, and actually, this is a text that the rabbis had difficulties explaining. It speaks about, where is it? 1 second. Uvat ish kohen kitehel liznot. Oh, here. 1 second. So the text is this: Uvat ish kohen kitehel liznot et avia mehalelet ba'esh tisaref. If a daughter of a kohen, if a daughter of a priest, becomes a harlot, she desecrates the name of her father. She'll be burnt by fire. Like how I missed this pasuk. It's right here. Okay, here it's one verse. Verse 9 in chapter 21. And the daughter of any priest, if she profanes herself by playing the harlot, she profanes her father, she shall be burnt with fire. This is very harsh, right? The rabbis did not understand the this type of prohibition, this type of punishment. They thought it speaks about adultery, because prostitution is not punishable by biblical law.
Yeah, but if we look back on the story of Judah and Tamar, Judah wanted to burn her because
Exactly.
she did harlotry,
Right.
not adultery.
Right. So this is where it makes sense. Exactly. The rabbinical interpretation here does not fit with the pshat, with the context and the meaning of the text. But once you see it in that light, again, these are verses that are in plain view, but unless we see them in the full context of this cultural phenomenon, we cannot fully understand them. But now, like you said, it makes perfect sense. And that's why the Torah also places special restrictions on the way the Kohanim should marry. Is this Isha? Look at verse 7. They shall not take a woman who is a harlot or profaned. Neither shall they take a woman put away from her husband. So they cannot marry a divorced woman. And why is that? I mean, if we look at with the same vein as we interpreted the discussion of the divorced woman previously in Deuteronomy, the Torah wants to prevent the temple from becoming this center of where people realized their sexual fantasies. So the woman will be divorced from her husband to go marry the priest. The priest is supposed to do the spiritual service and not provide any type of love or sexual relationships to anyone else. So when he marries, he should marry a woman who either is a widow, where the marriage was not severed deliberately by one of the sides. I mean, hopefully it was not deliberate, or someone who was never married before. And also we understand verse 9, Ubatish kohen ki tehel liznot, et avia mehalelet ba'esh tisaref. This word tehel is accurately translated here. She profanes herself, and not as some people wanted to understand tahel from to start lathil. So the warning here, I think, mostly is to the father. Do not direct your daughter to become that, because think about it, I know it sounds strange, but priests in the past, as even today, some religious leaders around the world saw the temple or the community or whatever it was as a family business or as a personal business. So for them, they would engage their family and their children in this activity. So the warning to the Kohen to the priest is, do not engage in that. Do not do that. So here it's true that here that the emphasis is on the daughter. 1 second. But if we look 2 chapters earlier, in chapter 19, we'll find the warning. This is the punishment. The warning is in verse 29 of chapter 19. Al tehalel et bitcha lehaznota. Profane not thy daughter to make her a harlot, lest the land fall into harlotry and the land become full of lewdness. So we do see that it was a rampant practice. It was done all over. So we know that it was present in the time of Eli in Shiloh. This is shortly after it's about 300 years after they entered the land of Israel, the beginning of kingdom, just before the time of King Saul. What happens later on, before the destruction of the temple, like all the way into the last days of the second temple, of the first temple? So for that we have to go to the book of Kings. 1 Kings. This we didn't do this one yet. So 2 Kings. This is chapter 23. Yes. Okay. So here in 2 Kings chapter 23. Before that, in chapter 22, this is like the backstory. King Josiah or Yoshiao was 8 years old when he began to reign, and in the 18th year of the king, meaning that he was 26 years old, he decided to refurbish and renovate the temple. And as they're doing that, in verse 8, where this Hilkiah the high priest said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. They read the book, and when the king had heard the words of the book, he rent his clothes. Are you familiar with this story? Okay, so first of all, it should be a surprise to us that they were so detached from the tradition that they were not aware of the word of the Torah. Meaning, they have the temple, they run services, everything is going according to, I guess, protocol, and all of a sudden they find a scroll, and the scroll tells them that what you're doing is not right. They take the book to a prophetess by the name of Huldah the prophetess, and she says this, that God says, I'm going to punish you. Why? Because you have forsaken me and you have offered unto other gods. And as a result, after hearing this terrible prophecy, the king makes a covenant. We note that we again see the word covenant. And let's read here in verse 4 what he does. He decides to clean the temple. So just to get a sense of how deep this kind of idolatry ran in the temple, let's read the whole text. Maybe I'll share. Abby, would you want to read verse 4?
Sure. In English?
Yes.
Okay. And the king called Hilkiah the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for the Asherah, and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them unto Bethel.
Okay. 1 second. I just counted in this verse 3 types of idolatry. I will keep counting. After each verse, I will tell you how many I counted. Okay? So go on to verse 5.
And he put down the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to offer in the high places in the cities of Judah, and in the places round about Jerusalem, that also offered unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the constellations, and to all the host of heaven.
Okay, I got to 11. Okay?
Excuse me. And he took away the horses that the kings of Judah had given to the sun.
No, you skipped verse 6.
Oh, I thought you said to go to 11.
No. I said I counted 11 types of idolatry so far. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I'll go to 6. And he brought out the Asherah from the house of the Lord without Jerusalem unto the brook Kidron, and burned it at the brook Kidron, and stamped it to its small to powder, and cast the powder thereof upon the graves of the common people. Which,
by the way, is like what Moshe did with the golden calf, right? Mm-hmm. He ground it and is over the brook. Okay, verse 7.
And he broke down the houses of the Sodomites that were in the house of the Lord, where the women wove coverings for the Asherah.
There's another 2. Okay, no. We got up to 14, verse 8.
And he brought all the priests out of the cities of Judah and defiled the high places where the priests had made offerings, from Geba to Beersheba. And he broke down the high places of the gate that were at the entrance of the gate to Joshua, the governor of the city, which were on a man's left hand as he entered the gate of the city.
Okay, here you could skip on to verse 10.
And he defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, that no man might make his son or his daughter to pass through the fire to Molech.
You want Donna to continue reading, Abby?
Yeah, I'm recovering from laryngitis.
Oh, okay. You should have told me. Sorry. Okay.
And he took away the horses that the king of Judah had given to the sun at the entrance of the house of the Lord by the chamber of Nephon Melech, the officer, which was he burned the chariots of the sun with fire. And the altars that were on the roof of the upper chamber of Ahaz, which the king of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the 2 courts of the house of the Lord, did the king break down and beat them down from thence, and cast the dust of them into the brook Kidron. And the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were to the right hand of the Mount of Corruption, which Solomon the king of Israel had built for Ashtoreth, the detestation of the Zidonians, and for Chemosh, the detestation of Moab, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, did the king defile. And he broke in pieces the pillars, and cut down the Asherim, and filled their places with the bones of men.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I skipped to verse 15. Moreover,
the altar that was at Bethel.
Okay. We can stop here. So I it's hard to count. We talk about 25 different types of idolatry, and priests all over the cities of Israel. This is really a very thorough description of a multitude of forms of idolatry that was conducted at the time of the temple. It's pretty shocking, right? I think especially when you hear rabbis today saying of how terrible is our generation and this and that, right? And you read. I think you should read this chapter and say, you know what, we're pretty good. We're not that bad. But what is from all these verses, all this horrific description that we find here? Which verse is the one that is what? That is associated with our theme?
7.
Verse 7, he broke down the house of the Sodomites that were in the house of the Lord, where the women wove coverings for the Asherah. So the translation is Sodomites, which we understand refer to male prostitutes, right? But the translation did not take into account and women, right? Why? Because the Hebrew has an interesting phenomenon, and that is the default
plural is masculine.
Exactly. The default plural is masculine, meaning if I have in a room 20 students, they're all girls, we'll say hatalmidot. But if one male student joins them, we will say hatalmidim. Right? And the same goes for 1,000 or 1,000,000, doesn't matter. Once there's one man and many women, you always refer to them as
lucky. No,
what?
I said lucky.
Lucky, yeah. I'm not sure about that. So the Batei Qedeshim could refer to both men and women. But what we find in any case is that in Bet Adonai, inside the temple, there's a designated place with probably there's a plaque, okay, for Batei Qedeshim, turn left, go all the way to the end of the corridor, or something like that. It's not done anymore in obscurity. It's part of the service of the temple. Even that part, Asher Anashim Oregot Sham, the discussion of weaving is probably a euphemism to the or either a euphemism or actually the part of the service of what the women did was weaving, because it was considered in antiquity and even today some kind of a mystical or magical act of creation. Weaving is like giving birth and giving life, and we will see that there are other places where we have this connection. So it's from the time of the tabernacle in Shiloh, at the time of Eli, to the end of the period of the first temple in Jerusalem. We know that that practice was active, right? Of promiscuity or prostitution in the temple. But so, Josh, you mentioned one verse, but there's another verse that is connected to this practice, even though less directly. We don't even think of that in the same way. I asked you before, what do you think happened to the children of these relationships?
Oh, they're probably killed.
How?
How were they killed? Were they burned themselves?
They had probably different methods to commit this terrible sin of killing the children, or an infanticide, right? But there was one particular way that served them best, because they could pretend that it's a religious ceremony, and that is verse 10.
Oh, yeah.
He defiled Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, that no man might make his son or his daughter to pass through the fire to Molech. People could have cover up for their actions by sacrificing their children to Molech. And that's another interesting connection that I found throughout Tanakh, that usually, especially in the prophets, Isaiah to Ezekiel, and the minor prophets, the 12 minor prophets, whenever the sin of promiscuity in the temple is mentioned, the sin of murdering children is mentioned next to it, as they were tightly connected. We'll look at one more source in Nevi'im, in prophets, and this is in Isaiah. And this is also something that was misunderstood in the Orthodox tradition. People understand that as a call for modesty. This is in chapter 3, verse 16. It says, moreover, the Lord says, because the daughter of Zion are haughty and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet, therefore the Lord will smite with a scab the crown of the head. It's a terrible punishment, right? So people understand it speaks about immodest dress code. But if you continue reading, you realize that there's a list here of many accessories and garments that those women wore. In verse 18, in that day the Lord will take away the bravery of their anklets and the fillets and the crescents, the pendants, bracelets, veils, head tires, armlets, sashes, corselets, amulets, rings, nose jewels, aprons, mantelets, cloaks, girdles, gauze robes, fine linen, turbans, mantles, etc. So they are very well wrapped. They're not immodest in their dress, right? They're not wearing short sleeves or mini skirts or anything like that. As like I said, some people in the Orthodox community try to argue. But of all these, but who are these women that Isaiah is so upset with? They are very well wrapped, just like Tamar wrapped herself. And there is one specific word that was of interest to me here, which was translated as fine linen. In Hebrew, dinim, right? Even in the English translation, fine linen stands out among all them. Why?
Is that because it was the priests? Is that a word used for the dress of the priests?
That also, the word linen. No, but if you look, let's say you just look at English, right? How is fine linen when you look at, let's say, those two lines? Aprons, mantlets, cloaks, girdles, gauze robes, fine linen, turbans, and mantles. So what is fine linen? It could be, it's not a noun, it's not the object, but rather the material from which it's made, right? Fine linen. But what is made of the fine linen? What type of robe or garb? It doesn't say. So in modern Hebrew, the word sdinim, you know what it means? Sadin, sdinim.
No, I don't know what that is in modern Hebrew.
It means sheets, bed sheets,
Okay.
right? Beddings. So I just wanted to make sure that that it is the meaning of the word and it's not modern Hebrew, because this is where you have to be careful when you study Tanakh and you compare it to modern Hebrew. We know that many words that did not exist in modern Hebrew were invented, either borrowed from other languages or made up based on traditional roots. So, just for example, the word for brushing in Hebrew for brush is lehavrish, and in this case, the Eliezer ben Yehuda, who revived the Hebrew language, took the English word brush and turned it into a Hebrew one, even though it doesn't appear in our sources. So I said maybe it's the same thing here. Maybe sadin in the Bible means something different than what it means today. So I checked the etymology of the word, and it turns out that it's an Akkadian word. So it predated the Torah, the Bible, in thousands of years, and had a very clear and established meaning by the time this text was written, which is bed sheets. It is beddings. So among all these garbs and robes that the women wear, the prophet mentions those beddings, right? And he is speaking in this context about the temple. So we understand that at the time of Isaiah, also this was a common phenomenon at the temple, right? So now all this is connected to, of course, there were other verses in Tanakh. I want to show you one. Which one is a possibility, and that is just for now it's theoretical, but it's important to consider this possibility, and that is in chapter 23. Chapter 19 of. One second. Let me stop sharing 1 second. I can do that. Let's go back to this. Abby, maybe you want to mute your phone so not sorry. Here it comes with you. Here, in chapter 18 here. Here's one of the most contentious and problematic verses in Torah in modern society, and that is verse 22 of chapter 18, right? Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind, it is abomination. This is the basis for the objection of Judaism and following in footsteps Christianity and Islam as well against homosexuality, right? The problem with this verse, when seen in context, is this. When you look at the top of the chapter, starting from 18:5, 18:6, it says, "None of you shall approach to any that is near of kin to him to uncover their nakedness." And then they speak about the father and the mother, father's wife, daughter, daughter's daughter, wife's daughter, father's sister, mother's sister, etc., etc. Right? And then after all these relation of kin, ending with Eshet Achicha, your brother's wife, it speaks about marrying a woman and her daughter, which means that the relationship to both of them will be through marriage. A woman and her sister, again, through marriage. A woman who is impure by her uncleanliness, okay? And then in verse 21, thou shalt not give any of thy seed to set them apart from Molech. So you shall not profane the name of God, I am the Lord. And then it goes to, you shall not lie with mankind. So the Torah deliberately drives a wedge between the list of forbidden sexual relationships and homosexuality. And what does the Torah use as a divider? The Molech. What is the Molech?
Idol.
We just read about the Molech here in Kings.
Sacrificing children to Moloch.
Here, look at verse 11, right? At verse 10. No man might make his son or his daughter pass through the fire to Molech. It's a very clear indication by the Torah that the prohibition of male-to-male relationship has to do with cult prostitution, because Molech is connected to cult prostitution. So so why would the Torah make this prohibition? Now this is for now not a let's put it this way, not a legal. What I'm making now is not still a legal decree, because I'm not getting into the realm of Jewish law. But from point of view of commentary, I would look again in this verse in Leviticus. This verse, and I would say this: the Torah wants to stop this phenomenon of cult prostitution, right? So it includes it under the rubric of forbidden sexual relationships, but wants to tell us that it's not about intimate and personal relationships, but rather it's about idolatry. So the list of intimate or personal relationship ends with El Eshet Amitechad, you shall not lie carnally with your neighbor's wife. That's a personal relationship. Then in verse 21, the Torah segues to speak about idolatry. And when the Torah says, do not let your children be burned to the Molech, it actually says, do not let women serve as this service at the temple, because you will end up doing that as well. And then in verse 22, it speaks about the cult prostitution of males. Now, to prevent the possibility that people will interpret the verse as referring to personal relationships and loving relationships, and will try to prosecute and punish men who have loving relation between them. The Torah says this: you shall not sleep with the men as you sleep with the woman. That's sort of the technical, the technicality upon which everything revolves. Because no man can sleep with the man the way he sleeps with the woman. It's technically impossible. So the Torah sort of planted the seed of disabling that as a legal procedure. And I believe that the priests or the rabbis, whoever was in charge of the halachic or the legal process, were instructed that this prohibition only refers to the public domain and not to the private domain. That this was a prohibition that was directed only towards the temple and not towards personal relationships. Now, why is it important to me? And this is also part of why I started the research. I think, Josh, you heard a similar lecture, right, in LA when I was there?
Yes.
Right? Why was it important to me? Because this verse is used as a weapon. This and the next one in chapter 19. Where is that? Sorry. Chapter 17. This is used as a weapon against the gay community, saying, you see, that God doesn't want you. Now, the big problem is, I think the real serious problem in today's reality is here. The corresponding pasuk is in chapter 20. Ve'ish asher yishkavet zachar mishkevei isha to'eva asu shenehem. If a man lies with mankind as with womankind, they have committed abomination. The word abomination is a key word because abomination is always associated with idolatry. So, but these two verses are used as a weapon against the gay community to say that homosexuality is forbidden. And in today that we know that sexual orientation is not a choice, then we have this problem. For an Orthodox person, for an Orthodox gay person, a deep problem. And it doesn't matter whether this is Orthodox, is it Jewish Orthodox or Christian Orthodox, what that person feels is that God created me in a certain way, but forbids me from having my identity. So God rejects me. How is this possible? But if we are able to confirm that this is the intent of the pasuk, that it is only meant to prevent cult relationships, but not intimate relationships or personal ones, then we have a solution for that problem, for the personal problem, and hopefully eventually to bring it to the consciousness of the community, of the public. Now, not everybody would agree on that, and especially because this issue is for many people loaded with fears, both in the personal level, social level. I think people try to hide behind the cloak of religion, but I think that the evidence that I've presented here in terms of the texts is pretty much unshakable. So people have to really go back and reevaluate their beliefs on the matter. Next week we will discuss the we have other texts that show that maybe some famous people in our history were the product of such relationships. That's one. And the other thing that we're going to discuss is the idea of divorce and romantic relationship versus the usage of the temple promiscuity as an escape from unsuccessful marital life. This is what the Torah tries to do, to tell people, do not use that as an escape, do not use it as an excuse for an extramarital affair, but rather invest your love and intimacy in your personal relationships at home. So that will be, God willing, next week.